Okay, let me introduce Dr. Jayanta Biswa Sarma, who is a medical graduate from Guwahati Medical College, Assam, and a academician by heart all the time. He has obtained 2 master's degrees, one in bacteriology and virology and molecular microbiology from Manchester University in 1996, and then later on MSc in genomics and Newcastle University as recently as 2019. So that's a very new area of biology, genomics, and as a medical professional, he's trying to use the idea of genomics in medical microbiology. Dr. Sarma has obtained his PhD from Guwahati University, Assam. He has been a rare academician in learning made mode and also a medical professional with acumen to use multidisciplinary scientific exploration and innovation with cutting-edge scientific approach. He obtained his diploma in hospital infection control, London School of Hygiene, Tropical Medicine, CMI Level 6 certificate in Senior Education Leadership Development, Durham University 2013, and postgraduate diploma in medical education from Dundee University 2018. He has been awarded with MRC PAT Medical Microbiology by the Royal College of Pathologists, London in 2003 and FRC PAT 2008 by Royal College of Pathologists. Dr. Sarma has been consultant microbiologist at Northumbria Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust UK since 2003. He was a clinical lecturer at Newcastle University between 2003 and 2019. Since June 2020, he is working as lead consultant microbiologist at the Mid Yorkshire Hospitals NHS Trust. He has served as postgraduate training program director in medical microbiology 2013 to 16 in the Northern Deanery and as the joint head of School of Laboratory Medicine from 2016 to 2019. Health Education Northeast. He is a visiting honorary faculty since 2020 at the Center for the Environment, IIT Guwahati, which is my center. Dr. Sarma's research interest includes one of the top global health issue, which is antimicrobial resistance. In the morning, we discussed a lot about antibiotics and antibiotic resistance. So Dr. Sarma is an expert in this area. And associated infection. His pioneering postdoctoral research covers issues of AMR, decoding novel mechanisms of resistance, NDM1, which led to a collaborative publication in prestigious journal Lancet Infectious Diseases in 2010. Today, this is one of his highly cited papers. He has co-authored a series of scientific papers on AMR and infection control. Dr. Sarma believes firmly in the social responsibilities of physicians and academicians. He has been instrumental in dissemination of knowledge pertaining to social and scientific issues through popular articles in Assamese vernacular media. His intellectual acumen is further reflected by his publication on compilation of essays and 3 translations of epics, English to Assamese. He is the founding chief editor of one of the highest circulated Assamese ZF magazine, Baro Uthara, which is mostly for teenage children. He is actively contributing in several social enterprises, the latest one being Assam Healthcare Cooperative Society, which is a flagship enterprise with his role and vision as a founder, vice chairman. So I now welcome Dr. Jayanta Biswa Sarma to deliver his lecture to the participants. I see around 49 attendees already joining. Sir, welcome to FDP program. And with this, I hand over the microphone to you.
Thank you, Utpal, for your introduction. It sounds like I'm a very big academician, but I'm really not. I'm a my day job is that of a consultant microbiologist. So mainly I'm a doctor, but I do kind of try to diversify into make my kind of attempt in different areas. But anyway, the participant, my heartiest congratulations to all of you on completing this rigorous workshop. Last 5 days you have been deliberating on technology and science, and today this is the last session. And actually, I think we will be discussing on philosophy and ethics in this session. I think philosophy and ethics and law, these are such a kind of generic aspects of life. Then whether we are a scientist or whoever, or a businessman, we cannot escape from philosophy and ethics. So I think with this brief introduction, let me present my slide. So the topic is ethical concerns of genome engineering. And there is the IPR part as well, which I have kept separate. And IPR part, landscaping part, I would not be talking too much actually, because I am not really an expert. So what I will be doing in that part, actually to speak in general, bit of philosophy and critique of IPR itself, and hope that would give you some flavor about, like, in keeping with the theme of today's session, philosophy and ethics. I think you will get a flavor of philosophical issues in IPR matter as well, and then you can obviously learn as much as you want in terms of your specific IPR landscaping requirement, in terms of the works you are doing, whether that works could lead to patent or not, what is the position in a particular country, etc., which is IPR landscaping. You can pick up, you can go on and pick up necessary information in due course. But let us first concern ourselves with this presentation: ethical concerns in genome engineering. I think with CRISPR, you have appreciated the power of CRISPR technology, so we can do wonder. But at the same time, it is fraught with risks. And interestingly, artists and writers, they kind of imagined, what could be the future like, and they have produced works of art and literature with this idea of what such kind of technology could, the consequence could of such type of technologies could be. So let us obviously will be. It is essentially a domain. What we are talking about is about eugenics and the new eugenics and the libertarian philosophy currently driving the new eugenics argument that this is a good thing. We should be embracing technology to enhance the human race. So these would come up in my subsequent slides. But let me first start with what this medical ethics is. It is like everything else. Medical ethics. The practice of medicine is about evidence. We practice evidence-based medicine. What I'm trying to say by that, you have heard about the Chinese scientist who produced, obviously he gone against the law of the land and produced designer babies with CRISPR technology. The baby is supposed to be resistant to HIV infection. So this is not yet evidence-based, because we don't know whether those babies would really be protected from HIV. He did tinker with genes that he thought would impart resistance to HIV infection. But who knows? It is too complex. We sometimes see genomics as if it can be deterministic. You interfere with a gene, you make a gene better or worse or whatever, and as if that is what it is. We are just nothing but a bunch of genes. But actually, reality is much more complex. With interaction with environment, interaction even within the body, within the you know how epigenomics, the epigenomics is now a big field, and you can see how gene interacts with its immediate environment as well in terms of producing its results. So it's too complex. Sometimes we tend to kind of make it too specific that that there is a gene for intelligence. There is no gene for intelligence. At least we don't know there is a gene for intelligence. And even if there is one, it cannot be just one gene. One gene cannot explain intelligence. Yes, many Mendelian diseases can be explained by one gene. Those are monogenetic diseases. But none of the diseases we are kind of confronted with in today's modern world, like diabetes, hypertension, obesity, these are not monogenetic. Many genes and interaction with environment, it's too complex. So we are grappling with complexities, so we have to be so careful about it. So, okay, let me not divert from the topic. So let me first explain what are the tools of medical ethics and why medical ethics is necessary. Obviously, the new technology is empowering us, and we can cloning, genome editing, reproductive technologies. These are new domains, these are new avenues, and the consequence of these, when we imagine, we immediately find the relevance of medical ethics for us to navigate. And not only that, mundane issues like how healthcare resources can be equitably distributed, it could be a matter of medical ethics. But medical ethics is about values of the society, values of the society that we live in, direct medical ethics. And it is when you are confronted with an ethical dilemma, I think way out of is to argue, between the two parties, the proponent of a particular action and the opponent of that particular action. So we have to enter into vigorous argument, and then only we will arrive at a kind of a considered course of action. So argument plays central role in medical ethics as well as in law. Law is all about argument. There is a difference. In law, the argument is founded on the statute books. Whatever law says that in the statute books or by the previous precedent, like previous judgment. So you cannot go beyond that framework. But in ethics, there is no such constraint. Your argument is not limited by a set of 5 principles or 10 principles or a particular framework. Actually, you are free to argue from whatever point. So far, your argument is rational. So medical ethics, the role of argument is slightly different. There is no constraint. We can apply any argument. So far, we are talking sense, not nonsense. So far, we are rational. So that is there is a bit of a difference in terms of role of argument in law and medical ethics. Quickly again, I say that we are not ethics is not limited by principles, but medical practice itself is based on principles. Ethics is not limited by principles. We can go beyond. We can invent new principles given a new situation, new circumstance. But we, as a doctor, we are guided by certain principles, and of course we are limited by law as well. We cannot go against the law of the land, however unethical a particular law could be in relation to a particular medical situation. So, what are the principles of medicine? The first principle I am giving you. I'm aware that I'm not talking. I am talking to scientists, not to a group of doctors. But I think to understand the implications of genomics, probably we need to understand the premise of medical practice as well, the ethical premise. So respect for patient autonomy. This is a fundamental principles of modern medical practice. So whatever patient wishes, I want this treatment or I do not want this treatment, I think that is his autonomy. A doctor is very careful, very respectful to patient wishes. Then second principle is beneficence, that we are guided by the best interest of the patient. We should be doing things which is in the best interest of the patient. We cannot do things which is in my interest, that performing this operation at this time would suit my daily routine, but it may be a bit delayed. It may not be at the best interest of the patient to take him to theater at 12 at middle of the night, perhaps, for an elective operation. It's a very trivial example, but it's a much more profound than that. Everything we do, at its heart is the benefit of the patient, the best interest of the patient. Non-maleficence principle is related to the beneficence principle. If we keep patient interest at heart, then obviously we would not do any harm. But even then, it is explicitly stated that do not do harm. So to me, if I can't help a patient, at least I should not be harming him. So that is a non-maleficence principle. And then the last principle is the justice. If I am, in every situation, resources limited. Resources are always limited. So if I am doing good to one patient, I am doing that at the cost of another patient. That might be possible. So we have to be very considerate about using our healthcare resources in terms of our specialist power. Maybe a hospital got only 2 doctors, where these 2 doctors should be rushing into to deliver their care. There are 10 patients. How they are going to prioritize? So this is a matter of, distributive justice, how we would do that. And that requires considerable, judgment and application of ethics. Then how I am guided in this field of medical ethics, how I am supposed to start even arguing on something. So we are provided with a toolbox, this is called toolbox of reasoning. So when we discuss about things, we got this toolbox and we use one of those, techniques of making my points for euthanasia, against euthanasia, for CRISPR gene editing or against gene editing. I mean, changing the nature of human genome. I can make my points, you can make the opposite points, but this is the set of toolbox we are guided by. But first of all, it always pays to distinguish between the facts and the values. Sometimes facts and values intermingle in such a way that it is very difficult to untangle them, So we need to differentiate between facts. Facts are facts, but values are different, so we need to be aware of that. And when we reason, when we argue, of course we argue from principles, like the 4 principles I have cited for medical practitioners. So if I am to argue a particular circumstance, what would be my course of action, I would resort to those principles. But as I said, I am not limited by the principles. Maybe I have to invent new principles, but primarily I would still be going by the established principles, principles that are universally accepted for ages. Then defining terms, whenever we do a discussion, if we don't define the term specifically, then by the single term, you and I would be meaning to different things, and then we would not be discussing the same thing. Our discussion would be, you won't understand me, or I won't understand you, or rather we will misunderstand each other. Then there are always concepts in any field of study, and making those concepts clear, first of all, is necessary. Then case comparison, we can compare between 2 different circumstances. That is another tool. Then thought experiment, like scientists, like Einstein, like quantum physics, scientists do thought experiment in not only in quantum physics, but in, every thought experiment is a very useful scientific tool and philosophical tool. So we can make use of thought experiment. Then of course logic. Logic, everything we say, it follows from from the premise. We make a logical argument starting from a premise, and in making logical arguments, even computer can make logical arguments. Everything AI and everything based on logic. So, but what we have to be very careful about spotting and avoiding fallacies. Some logical arguments may look very sound. Yes, this is very logical. I cannot argue with it. You will see watertight logic sometimes, but you have to be careful. If the premise is wrong, or there has been certain fallacies, within that logical argument, if you fail to discover, fallacies, then conclusion of a fallacious logic would not be valid. So then, it is not about just rationality all the time. We have to sometimes go beyond the tools, and because if rationality practiced in isolation of other virtues can, like bureaucracy, become rigid and inhuman. It's we have to be mindful about that. So hearts and mind, role of hearts and mind, without right sensitivities and awareness to the context, consistency and moral enthusiasm can lead to bad decisions. So essentially in ethical discussions, beyond the tools, beyond the rationality, beyond argument, we need wisdom, we need imagination, we need creativity. Like in science, when you are performing a research, you need imagination, we need creativity and wisdom. I'm tempted to kind of give you the definition of wisdom. What is wisdom? It's interesting. Wisdom is a combination of moral integrity with an utmost intuitive grasp of likely outcome of our actions. And it requires an understanding of how people are likely to react to a situation. So it's a combination of moral integrity and an almost intuitive grasp of the likely outcome of our actions. Very interesting. A wise person most of the time does the right thing with right consequence. And wisdom comes from experience. So the time passes, we become wiser. I am wiser than what I was 10 years back today. So that is how we gain wisdom, with reflection, with experience, and reflecting on our experience. So imagination needed to understand perspective and emotions. Creativity is required to develop an argument, to consider possible counter-argument. With creativity, you can almost imagine what would be the counter-arguments, and you are ready to counter the counter-arguments. So these are important things: wisdom, imagination, and creativity. So now, with this basis, let us move to the topic proper, that is the consequence of genome editing. So I have to give you, I would like to give you the philosophical, foundation for this, for our aspiration, the aspiration of the humankind to even be better. That is an aspiration. And there is a philosophical movement, called transhumanism. The aspiration here is to improve humanity using selective breeding, But that was the old. What I'm trying to say, this aspiration is not new, not today. People tried to improve the humanity by using selective breeding, in the past. But modern transhumanism obviously is more sophisticated. They believe in the desirability and possibility of the human race, radically superior to the present. And this prospective future race is called posthumans. Posthumans far exceed the virtues and capacity of current human genius, and even be capable of enjoying a higher state of consciousness and bliss. Like the yogis, who enjoys higher state of bliss, they are at a higher level of consciousness. Then this transhumanism movement is imagining a future human race like that, where every single one of us would be like that. Nothing wrong in this aspiration. It's a very noble aspiration. But when we are puristic, when we are Maulabadi, when we become too true to a particular ideology, it comes with certain risk of doing inadvertent harms to our prospect. So we have to be careful about when we pursue a vision in a too puristic way, because life is not that simple. Life is not linear. It is essentially complex. And as a scientist, I feel that we do not understand complexity. Rather, I would say we do not actually consider complexity at all. We are still guided by mechanistic logic, like everything is as if like a complex, like a clock, everything can be accounted for by its component. But we are understanding now that 1 + 1 is not 2, but could be 4, especially in biology, in social sciences, and so on. Our action comes with consequence and also unintended consequence. If we do not foresee unintended consequences, we would be doing immense harm. So, eugenics is the term. It was coined by Francis Galton in 19th century. It is a science of improving human hereditary qualities. But it is a science of improving. It's a science, but it evokes the horror of the early 20th century of forceful state-sponsored program of sterilization of individuals deemed imperfect. So in America, in Germany, early 20th century, actually it was a brutal practice to, the practice of eugenics, the ideal of eugenics actually led to brutal practices. It peaked in Nazi Germany between 1933 and 1945, and United States during the period late 18th to mid 1920th. I'm going to cite a couple of examples from the United States. Because of the it is not I didn't bring any example from Germany, because if you see the examples from the USA, you would be horrified. These are two couple of plaques. This is 1907 Indiana eugenics law. By late 1800s, Indiana authorities believed criminality, mental problems, and pauperism, I don't know what the term means, were hereditary. Various laws were enacted based on this belief. In 1907, Governor J. Frank Henley approved first state eugenics law, making sterilization mandatory for certain individuals in state custody. Sterilization halted in 1909 by Governor Thomas Marshall. This is another plaque from the same place, same year. Indiana Supreme Court ruled 1907 law unconstitutional. So court eventually did intervene. In 1921, that 1907 law was nullified by the Supreme Court, citing denial of due process under 14th Amendment. So this is what it was. Now look at this. Application of law, that is state power, but here the state is using the power of social marketing. They are projecting that they are actually motivating people by means of incentives, advertisement. Look at this advertisement: Better Baby Contest, Indiana State Fair. You see, so they are promoting that do not give birth if you are a bad man. Essentially, bad man inverted quote. What is good, what is bad? Again, a philosophical question. But essentially, if you are dumb, then you got no right to produce babies, and they are trying to promote within the society for people to voluntarily take up these ideas. If I am blind, I am not supposed to give birth. If I am dumb, I am not supposed to give birth. So that was kind of, things that was promoted. during that time. They were even issuing couple, certificates. If two healthy, perfectly, what we call perfect, couples are married together, we are giving them certificates. You see, that was the practice during that time. And look at this. This is called eugenics building. Obviously, they are deliberating the goods of eugenics in that building. And, it is kind of a, propaganda sort of a, some kind of incentive being given. But I was surprised to read these placards. These are placards. These are historical pictures. These are real people holding placards, and probably out of their own will. I do not think it is United States of America. So they are holding these placards out of their own will. And read what these placards are saying. This first one: I must drink alcohol to sustain life. I am an alcoholic. Fair enough. Shall I transfer the craving to others? So essentially, if I am an alcoholic, I am urged not to produce babies because I would pass on my cravings, alcoholism, to the babies. Obviously, it was based on wrong science. Today we pride ourselves in that we understand, we are more scientific. But you can still ask that everything we do in terms of modification of human genome, do we really understand everything? Is our action is really based on sound scientific foundations? I think there are still avenues that we need to be kind of reminding ourselves. That was bad science. That alcoholism is not hereditary, but that was like their firm belief at that time. Look at the second placard. Could the prisons and asylums be filled if my kind had no children? So this guy was kind of holding the placard saying that I am a bad man, I am a man, I am supposed to be in an asylum, I am a lunatic. But if I don't produce babies, then in future we will not need an asylum. So that is again promotion of eugenics. And this guy, I cannot read this sign, he's a blind guy. By what right have I children? Can you imagine? It was United States of America in as early as in early 20th century. It's amazing. In recent times, obviously, the arguments of old eugenics is not applied any longer. The new eugenics is different. Ethical arguments are nowadays based on libertarian ideology, and this libertarian ideology have been advanced by the human enhancement, proponent of human enhancement. So they say that parents should voluntarily take advantage of the reproductive technologies such as embryo selection and genetic engineering to enhance the mental and physical attributes of their progeny by pre-selecting or even genetically engineering desirable genetic traits. Either pre-selecting embryos, we can, out of 5 embryos, we can do genetic testing and find out which is the best fittest embryo, and then we will go for that one. So that we can do, or we can apply CRISPR technology. We can edit a gene. We can, make a designer baby. Truly, in the sense. So that's what they are proposing. That you do it. You are a parent. Of course, you need, you like, talented children. So these are technologies available. Make use of it. So that is the libertarian argument. But a section of libertarian would go as far as to say that it is morally obligated. It's not a matter of choice, but you are morally obliged to adopt these technologies and produce best possible babies in the interest of the human race. There are two kind of, moral obligation argument need not be applied. True libertarian would not apply moral obligation argument. But there is a section of people who are building on the libertarian ideology and going a step further to say that it is morally obligated. So we will be critically examining, is that the right step to take, or there are pitfalls, there are dangers associated, particularly in the context of CRISPR gene editing technology. We'll be examining if new eugenics in fact is not so new. It is probably the old eugenics in a new disguise, old wine in a new bottle, so to say. And we'll examine, even if libertarian ideal is protected, whether a situation depicted in Aldous Huxley's novel Brave New World or American science fiction film Gattaca, that is from 1997, and emergence of a privileged species, Homo Deus, as warned by Yuval Noah Harari, we'll be examining whether in this work of art and literature, three situations has been depicted, starting from 1932, as recent as 2015. The artists and philosophers and the writers has been imagining of a future world. So let us examine these three works a little bit in depth. First of all is the Gattaca. This is the film that was made in 1997. It is a story of a man called Vincent Freeman. So he was conceived without the aid of reproductive technology. But the society at that time, in the society depicted in the film, everybody who can afford were taking advantage of the reproductive technologies. So all his competitors, all his peers are actually perfect human beings, so-called perfect human beings. They born, their parents use reproductive technologies or whatever technologies to choose the best, best possible babies in terms of talents and capability and so on. So this guy, Vincent Freeman, essentially in a disadvantaged position because he is not competing with the equals. He was but he did fight, and this is his story and how he fulfilled his dream to make a career in space travel. So that is the kind of the story of this film. And the film obviously explored few ideas, like the idea of human dignity and justice, which go actually hand in hand. It explored liberal eugenics. It kind of vividly portrayed that liberal eugenics introduces yet another instrument of discrimination and stigmatization in our increasingly unequal world. So what film has projected is not without foundation, which is vividly portrayed. In fact, the film exposes another fallacy, genetic determinism, that humans are nothing more than the aggregates of their genes. Because this Vincent Freeman, he's a perfect human being. He got emotions, he's striving all the time, he is fighting to be better every day. These are the innate human nature. But we are kind of saying, no, I don't have to fight because I can have a gene that the gene would fight for me. I don't have to strive because I got a gene for talent implanted in me. So I don't have to make any effort to be talented, to be intelligent, to be remembering thousands and thousands of pages of codes, because I got that particular gene. But the film is making the point, no, we human beings are not like that. We do not want a human race that would be like that. Okay, let us Brave New World. The theme is similar, but that was even before, in 1932, Aldous Huxley, he wrote this novel, and the plot of the novel goes like this. It was set in a futuristic world state where citizens are environmentally engineered into an intelligence-based social hierarchy. And that was possible due to huge scientific advancement in reproductive technology, sleep learning, psychological manipulation, and classical conditioning. And all these things eventually combined to make actually not an utopian society, but a dystopian society. In that future state, society is stratified into certain strata. And that was possible because people were conditioned by the use of, not only, first of all, the citizens, in that state, the citizens are manufactured in vitro, not in mother's womb, but artificially, just like we see broiler chicken manufactured, in a hatchery. And then, like we can classify broiler chicken, the best one, second best one, third best one, that society was, stratified in that fashion. And let me read these bullet points. A future utopian state where citizens are produced in vitro, that is not in mother's womb, but in a factory. The society is structured in an intelligence-based social order where everybody is healthy and happy. And they are immersed in soma, kind of a intoxicating drink. Everyone gets to fulfill his or her desire. People no longer need to struggle, aspire, feel emotions, or must make difficult moral choices. It's a utopian world. I don't have to make any choices. Everything is good. And highly advanced reproductive technology, technique like sleep learning and advanced neuroscience, allowing psychological manipulation, because you would require psychological manipulation to make such a discipline is probably not the proper word, but a obedient bunch of people, and classical conditioning, which eventually destroyed the very essence of human nature. So that was imagined by Aldous Huxley in 1932. And Homo Deus, this is a non-fiction by this Israeli professor, published in 1915. He ended his this non-fiction with this line: "What will happen to society, politics, and daily life when non-conscious but highly intelligent algorithms know us better than we know ourselves?" So he was imagining a society where a group of people, so-called advanced people, Homo Deus, they would be using artificial intelligence to dominate over the masses. Essentially there would be two species living side by side, Homo sapiens and Homo Deus. Homo Deus would be controlling everything. They would be using artificial intelligence. And of course, this Homo Deus, how they evolved? They evolved using technique like CRISPR, modern technique, to enhance themselves and to raise themselves to a pedestal, to that kind of powerful position. So let me read these bullet points. In this provocative sequel to *Sapiens*, author Yuval Noah Harari raises the prospect of a small number of elites who elevate themselves to a godlike species, Homo Deus, and exclusively derive benefits from technology in a new world order where they reign supreme in collaboration with artificial intelligence and super intelligent robots. These are, if Noah Harari can raise the prospect of this, we cannot really dismiss Aldous Huxley or the film Gattaca's story as a kind of a work of fiction. It is just imaginative. There are some bases. I'm not saying that this is inevitable, but there are bases to be concerned about. And this is what is ethics. Ethics takes every concern into consideration. You have to consider everything, every pros and cons, and then you arrive at a well considered ethical position. In ethics, we kind of there are different philosophical schools in ethics. You may come from a different school of thought. I may come from a different thought of school. And essentially, there are two branches. Not two, but there are many philosophical strands. But I'm just these two term sort of philosophical strand has come up during this presentation. One is deontology. Deontology, philosophical ideas idea is that we should be doing a good thing just because it is a good thing. Don't worry about the consequence, good or bad. For example, killing is bad. As simple as that. So don't kill anybody, not even in a war, don't hang anybody, So that is a deontological argument that if the act is wrong, don't do that. If the act is good, do it. Don't think about the consequence. But the consequentialism is coming completely from the opposite direction. Consequentialism argues that no, an act is not inherently good or bad. It is the consequence. If the consequence of your act lead to good things, then yes, you are obliged to go by, obliged to perform that act. And similarly, if your act is going to produce a bad consequence, that act, you should not be performing that act. So these are two. But this argument in favor of eugenics is based on consequentialism. That we are morally obligated because using reproductive technology is good because we will be producing a better human race. So that is a argument from consequentialism. The obligation would remain, but liberal eugenics actually, although they do not really apply this consequentialism argument, at least in explicit terms. They say that any reproductive decision should be left to the parent. State should not intervene. That is what they say. But we would see, or we would make, people are arguing that is not going to remain as parental choice, because there will be pressure built up on the parents to actually adopt reproductive technologies and go for genetically engineered babies. So we'll see that, but I'm just giving you the philosophical basis for this argument. So the arguments then, ideal of liberal eugenics is not the same as the brutal state-sponsored program of elimination of human beings considered as imperfect. That is not what new eugenics is saying, because that was based on pseudoscientific knowledge. Instead, what liberal eugenics is saying, it is non-coercive, has the best interest of the parent at its heart in empowering them to bring the best possible offspring to the world. And in that sense, it is not so different from ordinary child rearing practices, which are left to parental choice and discretion in any liberal state. For example, which school my children would go to, I will decide. It is my choice as a parent. So they are arguing that it is similar. Whether you go for a designer baby or not, it is completely up to you. And this position is actually agreed by the International Bioethics Committee. So yes, that's fine. Yeah, but there are concerns. So this pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, which is now widely available, and it is permissible for Mendelian diseases. If somebody got Down syndrome, then the parent is totally within his or her right not to choose that embryo, but go for the healthy embryo. And vice versa. It is very interesting. Some parents, even today, they would prefer to go for a deaf children. If I am a deaf couple and I'm given the choice to pick up a deaf embryo and a healthy embryo, actually there are many people in the world who would go for the deaf embryo, because there are movement of people of whom we perceive as deficient or challenged in some way. They do not necessarily think themselves as challenged. A blind people enjoy life. He doesn't think himself to be any way deficient. He is a fully competent human being, and he doesn't see his blindness as a weakness. Many would see. Many blind people would pity himself, but many would not. So these are the perspectives. These are the things we need to be very aware of. We cannot make decision for. I cannot make decision for you. You may be happy with your state of affairs, and that is perfectly all right. So, despite the ontological objection, obviously that it is wrong. It is tinkering with nature. Don't use. Those who are in opposition to the proponent of new eugenics, they come from the ontological perspective. Their argument: don't go for this baby selecting business, because it is morally wrong, because it is playing God, because it is going against nature. So these are the arguments against, put forward against new eugenics. But these arguments are not valid arguments either. We'll see. So basically, those who are opposed to liberal eugenics, they use this slippery slope argument. Everything I have been, telling you in opposition to new eugenics is essentially slippery slope argument. That if you allow pre-selection of embryo today, then tomorrow, obviously, you would be allowing CRISPR gene editing, and day after tomorrow, you would even allow that germline editing is okay as well. So it is a slippery slope. At the moment, editing germline DNA, what the Chinese researcher has done in terms of producing those two babies immune to AIDS, those are germline DNA. Those DNA would be passed over the generations. At the moment, it is completely illegal all over the world that by using CRISPR, we cannot edit our germline, genes. We can edit genes, a somatic gene to cure a disease, but not a germline. But these people who are in opposition to new eugenics, the transhumanism, opposition to post-human idea, they would say no. If you allow CRISPR today, tomorrow, what would prevent you from allowing germline DNA to be edited? So this is a slippery slope argument. But slippery slope argument is not accepted, actually. There are two kinds of slippery slope arguments. One is kind of logical, that it would happen inevitably because this is how things like. That is not accepted. But there's an empirical form of slippery slope argument. If you can empirically demonstrate, that in practice this would lead to that, that would lead to that, then slippery slope argument does take, lot of weight. So empirical form of slippery slope argument, if you can demonstrate that this action would inevitably lead to all those, subsequent actions, ultimately we are end up, doing a very immoral thing, and this slippage cannot be prevented by any barrier, any illegal barrier or whatever. Then slippery slope argument is a very strong argument. So CRISPR, as I said, CRISPR technology at present, the ethical consensus for intervention like CRISPR is only to modify existing person to cure diseases, but not to modify a possible future person. But future development and application of technology like PGD and CRISPR are going to be influenced by the dominant view of the prevailing society. So this is a slippery slope argument. Yeah. In future, the view of society might change. Then many things should be acceptable, which is not, acceptable today. So let me give you the idea of human dignity, how human genome is kind of, as of now, universal consensus is that human genome is a integral whole. It is sacrosanct. It cannot be manipulated with. That is the consensus at the moment. Human genome is the heritage of humanity. Any modification should be allowed only for preventive, diagnostic, and therapeutic reasons, and not for propagating into descendant. So that is the values. Everybody agrees that is our values. Whether this value would change tomorrow is a question. But as of today, this is what we considered as sacrosanct. The Universal Declaration of Human Genome and Human Rights state the human genome underlies the fundamental unity of all members of the human family, as well as the recognition of their inherent dignity and diversity. So all our flaws, that we call flaws, all our bad qualities are essentially human qualities as well. So those are to be cherished, those are to be protected. That is what it is, said in that declaration. So therefore, I'm again repeating, the kind of formalizing critiques of new eugenics. The human enhancement impinges on the principle of respect for human dignity. The human enhancement idea. So far, we use CRISPR to cure a disease, not controversial. We are not discussing any ethical dilemma in that regard. This ethical dilemma is in relation to the human enhancement aspect. So be clear about that. There is no ethical dilemma using CRISPR to cure a heart disease, to cure a kidney disease on an existing person. That's absolutely fine. And it introduces the risk of new forms of discrimination and stigmatization for those who cannot afford such enhancement and simply do not want to resort. Some people cannot because it would be all privatized, not that government would be giving, to undergo CRISPR treatment free. So only the rich would be able to use it for the purpose of enhancing his offspring. Poor would not be able to. And also some people, as I alluded to, would prefer a blind children, a deaf children. That is their right as well. There is a new tendency. This is concerning. These first two arguments you can counter argue by saying that no, this is not a slippery slope. We will always maintain a clear distinction between enhancement and the curative application of CRISPR. So there is no scope for slippage. You can say that we will enshrine in a universal law. But again, the counter argument would be, can you guarantee that? Maybe a rogue state, North Korea, would take advantage of this technology, and they would be producing some kind of superhuman, and always the possibility is there of a slippage. But you can still argue, no, slippage would not occur. So therefore, we should be using CRISPR to its full potential today, and we'll make sure that it would not be applied for germline DNA editing. So don't be so concerned. Take a deep breath. But what is worrying is number 3 bullet. This point. There is already a new tendency to relink quantitative measurement to deterministic understanding of superior genetic trait, like as if you can measure intelligence by a set of tools. I IQ, for example, which is really not a measure of intelligence. But there is already a tendency. So these people, the group, they are actually reviving the race science that a particular race is superior because they got, these genes. These are, they are endowed with these positive attributes. As if there is a gene for every virtues that a particular race might have. So this is very dangerous. This ideology, the Nazi ideology, is really dangerous. It will be going to be making us racist, and it may turn out to be a instrument of social inequality and injustice. So these are essentially all coming from the slippery slope kind of a position. So in defense, it is said that we do need new technologies for equitable access. Not that the technology would make society inequitable, but actually to make society equitable, we need new technology to reduce actually inequality. And it is not necessary to invoke moral imperative, that you as a parent, you are obligated to produce good children. It is not necessary. We are not making that argument. The parents should be simply allowed to enhance their offspring, just as they are allowed to choose everything else at the best interest of their children. So that is the defense. But the question is it going to be the genuine choice? So let me encapsulate the ideas of Francis Fukuyama. He is a philosopher based in USA. He wrote a book actually called Our Post-Human Future, and he's a very optimistic guy. So he is laying the concerns, but he necessarily, he's not saying don't do it. You'll see in the next slide. But he's laying the concern. He's encapsulating it in articulating it for us, which is he cautions of a scenario where wealthy routinely uses PGB, or for that matter CRISPR, which may even allow one to even to predict the social background of a young person by his or her looks and intelligence. Like as in the film in the Gattaca, by just looking at the guy, oh, he's perfect, his parents must be very rich. He must have been produced by, using, these technologies. At the same time, if you see somebody, who kind of not similar to this guy, you might look down upon, oh, this guy was just produced ordinarily. That might, that could be possible. Just even now we are prejudiced. Looking at a boy, we take a view, oh, this boy must be from a very good family. Similar to that, we'll see somebody, we'll look at a boy or a girl, and we'll instantly realize he is a designer baby. And that would be a ground for discrimination, as in the film that Francis Vincent kind of experienced a prejudice against him. Then, if someone doesn't do as good, or he or she is able to blame, so if I'm then in that future world, if I am not doing good, I would simply say that my parent didn't chosen the good genes for me. That's why I am not good. It's not my fault. You see, that would be an argument that if I am wrong, then okay, the technology, the doctor must have committed something wrong. He didn't quite, produce the correct gene for me, and that's why now I am failing in my exam. So people would abandon taking responsibility. Then, eventually, adoption of reproductive technology, as they become efficient, safe, and commonplace, would eventually be dictated by the market force rather than the ideology. Like Facebook style of, marketing. Now we go by what is talked about in the Facebook, what our peers are doing. This goggles, this dress. It would be dictated by the market force. Then everybody would be going for, only the left behind would be the ones who simply cannot afford. The parent would be forced. Actually, this is not going to be remaining as a choice, as the libertarian argues. It is no longer a choice, but it is just a one-way path that I have to go for technology to produce my baby. So libertarian argument is thereby counter-argued by Francis Fukuyama. But he is arguing, because you have to consider the pros and cons. But actually, he is not so pessimistic. He is actually trying to offer a solution. What he is saying, however, he argues strongly against the defeatist attitude. He suggests an advocate using the power of the state to regulate technology. So he said that slippery slope did not necessarily happen. We can regulate technology. But he also recognizes it would be challenging to find common ground at an international level, as countries and societies differ in its attitude towards underlying ethical issues. I given you a very extreme example of North Korea, for example. They are not within the mainstream of nation of leagues. But he disagrees. Still, he disagrees with the notion that it is impossible to do so. He is arguing that some do get away with heinous crimes from time to time, but that is not a reason to legalize crime. Can you see that argument? That we got laws not to make people, not to, prevent people from committing crime, but there are still criminals in the society. So therefore, all law and legal frameworks should be abolished. Can that be an argument? We do not accept that argument. So similar to that one or two people, one rogue scientist in China or in North Korea or one particular state might do something against the common consensus, against the human, universal human values. But that doesn't mean that we would abandon adopting a technology like CRISPR, because otherwise the technology offers immense good. So that is his argument. So I think that was the last slide. So that I finished this part of the presentation with that particular slide. If we have any kind of question, comments, that we would like to sort of, do at this point, we could do so. Paul?
Yes. So, dear participants, if you have some questions, we can have some discussions right now.
It has been an hour, isn't it? We started at 10. We started at 10 my time, 2:30 your time. So it is about gone plus 3:30, 3:38, isn't it?
Yes, it's fine.
Yeah.
Any questions? I am audible, right?
Yeah, you are audible.
Yes.
I don't know whether I did any good job to that,
No, the topic is little bit maybe. This is a very different topic from our earlier topics, which are more technical.
Yeah.
And this is more people think are important for medical practitioners, but it is equally important for practicing scientists, and more so in biology and this emerging field of genome editing. Yes.
Like I said in the first, my introductory remark, I mean, every thinking human being should have consideration for ethics and moral and philosophy, isn't it? I mean, you cannot just be a scientist, so-called, and I only know A plus B whole square and nothing else, its implication in the society. That cannot be that.
Can you, somebody is writing something. Very interesting. Komal Taneja is writing. Very interesting talk. Has motivated me to read on this topic. Thank you for delivering it. Yeah, this is appreciation.
Yeah.
And then is one question by Priyadarshini, who is asking, what is your take on parents deciding about their children's genetic alterations, if at all such a reasoning is considered?
Yeah. No, I think this whole topic, last 1 hour, actually, we have been talking about that only, isn't it? Pros and cons. I think, you see, the libertarians are saying that, like I want to send my children to St. Mary's, similarly, it is not any different. If there is choices that I can choose which baby I want to go for, a fairer complexion baby or a slightly darker complexion baby, if PGD technologies or CRISPR technologies allows me to choose that, I should be allowed. It is like sending my children to convent rather than to Kamrup Academy, which is a school I went to, and nobody goes to that school nowadays if you can afford money to send your children to a private school. So if I can afford, if being a fair complex person is such a good thing, and I as a parent can choose whether my daughter is going to be fair complexioned or dark complexioned, I should be allowed. That is the libertarian ideology, But the counter arguments are I have presented in 3 examples of work of art and literature. Think about Brave New World. Think about the film Gattaca. Think about what Yuval Hariri has projected. Then in one day, there will be a superior race, the human deers. Yeah, because they would be selecting all the good stuff, being powerful, being a good, assuming that technology would allow us to choose. At the moment, we are at a very primitive stage, we don't know what gene does what. But assuming that one day we have unraveled the secrets of our genome and everything, and now with help of technology, I can actually acquire, then who would be acquiring those traits? Those who can afford to buy those technologies. Yeah? Then essentially it would be a club of elite people. That elite group is called Hemodias. And then that group will take possession of artificial intelligence, intelligent robots, and rest of the society would be just laborers. It would be exploitative society. So again, these are prospects. Whether, so therefore the answer to Priyadarshini, actually this whole topic has been on that particular theme only. So if you reflect, maybe I was not quite been able to, convey my, everything in there. But if you read this topic, you have to come up with your own judgment and own answer.
There is one question from Dinesh Prasad, who is asking, is there any similarity between consequentialism with AI?
No, I think consequently, AI is a technology, isn't it? AI is going to be much more much more intelligent, maybe 100 times intelligent than Einstein, can sort out any solution in no time. But he would be devoid of consciousness, and in a way, he works on a logical framework. He cannot do anything different, but he applies logic one after one, in a way. But the danger is that if at one step there is a fallacy introduced into that logic, everything is going to be wrong. The AI, the conclusion he would be arriving at would be totally wrong, because the logic was fallacious. So consequentialism is a philosophical, moral philosophy that if the consequence of my act is going to be good, then I should be doing that act. But I understand the question. What he is probably asking, that from consequentialism point of view, we are assuming that AI is all going to be good. So therefore, AI research should be permissible. Society should be investing in AI, but the question that the ontological philosophical school would counter is that AI is inherently wrong because we are interfering with nature. We are trying to produce a alternative sort of consciousness. The ontology may say that, but I think the more practical objection would be the unintended consequence. Many things are done out of benevolence. Many government policies are done out of benevolence. Then 6 months later, 1 month later, you see, oh my goodness, what is happening? My policy consequences are producing different kind of results. I am tempted to tell you one story here. I think it is a fiction. During British rule in India, in Delhi, there was a kind of nuisance caused by snakes, by cobras. Then government put out a scheme. If you kill cobras, if you kill one cobra, you will get 100 rupees or 10 rupees, whatever. So they give an incentive to kill people to kill cobras because government can't do it. People are out and about. If we incentivize, and it produced good results. Cobras were eliminated almost like. Then what happened? The government official has noticed that more and more people are coming with dead cobras and claiming money. Initially cobra population gone down, the policy produced good results, and nobody is claiming any money for, because no cobras to be killed. Then suddenly there is a trend, people are claiming money and money, producing dead cobras. These are real dead cobras. So officials gone like, my goodness, what is happening? Then what they found, certain unscrupulous people are actually making cobras in a farm. They are artificially producing cobras and taking cobras to the government officials to mint money. So this is called unintended consequence. So the physicist who died last year, wheelchair bound, Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking was dead against AI. He was very much against AI because he thought that there are unintended consequences of AI, which probably we don't know at this moment, and it could be really dangerous. So that was his contention.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions. Let me check out. One question coming from Dr. S. Naxi. Is there any international association to guideline the GMOs? I am asking this because there is still a controversy about the origin of SARS-CoV-2. Dr. S. Meenakshi is asking.
So she is asking whether there is any international kind of a body that is kind of regulating research on this
genetically modified organisms.
Yeah. There are like human, the bioethics, International Bioethics Committee, then United Nations. These are the bodies. They are producing guidelines. But I do not know whether there is a body that can actually enforce, this kind of restrictions. I do not know, but I think obviously with SARS, the concern that this was a gain of function research, which was in fact, gain of research funding was made by none other than CDC USA. Actually, the Wuhan laboratory is the recipient of funds from USA. I mean, we don't know whether SARS is a product of a medical, that is still a speculation. But yes, what she is saying that assuming, that is an unintended consequence. We want gain of function research to do good things, to understand viruses so that we can prevent, how a virus endowed with a new property could cause consequence and how we prevent that. how we anticipate that, and we put preventative measures in place. That is why gain of function research are, being done. But the unintended consequence is this: the SARS-2 probably has escaped. We don't know. It is still a realm of speculation. So you see, that is what I am talking about. This unintended consequence. We are not wise enough. Human beings are not wise enough to consider. Yeah.
When the meeting will be end?
Yes. Yeah, I think there is no such as body, but there is a Cartesian protocol on biosafety. It takes care of some of these aspects, but not everything. Right. Hello. Yeah, let us go to the next question. Yeah, Dr. Neeraj is asking, can gene editing technique boost intelligence?
You see, I made several points in that regard. Essentially, what this is linking. This is very dangerous in a way. I mean, you see, as of today, we know for sure that one gene is responsible for a disease. That is in case of few Mendelian diseases. That if you correct that gene, you correct the disease. But for everything else, it is not a function of one gene. It is multiple genes interacting with environment. The epigenomics the term I have referred to, epigenomics, that DNA, the chromosomal backbone. There are so many proteins in that double helix structure. And every gene is interacting with its immediate vicinity, with its environment, microenvironment. It is not as straightforward like messenger RNA transcription, translation, and there is a protein, and that protein is producing me as an intelligent person. It is not that. I personally don't believe that human being can be reduced to a sequence, and that this is for intelligence, this is for that, this is for that. I do not think you will never find a gene for intelligence. It is a function of many, many things. It is a complex affair. That's why I'm making again the point. When I say complex system, I think many of us probably think that it's a general term. It's a very specific term. You may say, we are sending rockets to, Mars. It's a very complex system. But actually, sending a rocket to Mars is not a complex system. It's a linear system. It's a mechanistic system. It's based on very, well-calculated steps. So this is not complex. The highest complicated things we are doing on this Earth today is not complex. It is simple, based on logical steps. Complex system is what? Complex system is weather system. We cannot predict weather because so many variables. It is said that even a flutter of a butterfly in America may result in rain in Assam. Complex system, it transcends from, there are phase transition happens. So we do not understand. I think there is now a complex system is being understood. Research is being done. So human body is a complex system. So to answer in categorical sense, there is not going to be a gene for intelligence. We will never find a gene for intelligence.
There is one question on PPT is on transhumanism from Rumana. Oh, no. Is it same for everyone? I think there was some problem with the PowerPoint presentation. I'm not sure whether it is a question. So asking PPT is on transhumanism. Is it same for everyone?
I mean, you see, I think probably what he wants some clarification. The PPT was not on transhumanism per se, but transhumanism is the driving force, the philosophical, underpinning, that we should be using technology to make our life better. But transhumanism goes a further step, that we should be making the human race better. A better human race for tomorrow. So that is the ultimate driving force for some people making the case for technology with uncertain consequences like AI and CRISPR. We are not wise enough to understand its consequences in further down the line. Just like given the example of that snake and the incentive scheme in Delhi by British Raj, that we do not understand. When British produced that scheme, that take 100 rupees, kill a cobra, take 100 rupees, that is as a means to control cobras. That policy aim was not delivered. Rather, people produced more cobras, which escaped them and produced far more damages. So this is called unintended consequence. Even for a simple matter which I'm saying, simple matter of controlling cobras, we cannot anticipate the consequence. How can we anticipate the consequence of AI and genome editing? Because one group of people, transhumanists, they are pushing for it, but we have to be careful. I mean, transhumanism producing a godlike species, nothing wrong on the surface. But is it that simple? I mean, in the meantime, we will produce an unequal society, as in the Homo Deus and Hariri has foreseen, anticipated that what would happen, a small group of people would be elevated, and they would be like godlike, and they would then reign on the masses. So PPT was not about a topic like this. You cannot be. That is, I think, a difference between doing a scientific presentation on CRISPR. You would be focusing on one particular gene, few specific techniques. You are very focused. But in a topic like philosophy and ethics and social, you have to bring in different, ideas to make your point. So I think that was probably a bit of a confusion on her part, but maybe I have understood the question wrong.
Sylvia, there are many words of appreciation for you for your lecture. Dr. S. Meenakshi is writing, "Thank you, sir. This FDP was fully packed with information with relevance to genome engineering. I have a kind of request, you could organize a workshop on genome editing tools in future. It will be very useful. All the speakers, especially Bora sir, made the lectures very interesting, and informative. Thank you and congratulations, sir." Rumana is writing, "We are also alerting other form of lives through gene editing. How ethical is it?" I think she is writing it should be altering, not alerting. Yeah. She's writing we are also alerting, but I think it should be altering.
Altering, yes.
We are also altering other form of lives through gene editing. How ethical is it? And are we prepared to deal with the consequences of any fallout that could happen?
Let me answer that question. Who is the questioner? You muted again yourself.
Rumana is asking this question. Yeah.
Rumana, it is very interesting. You are kind of expressing an idea. Shall we be interfering with nature? Shall we be with the human race? Should we play God? Maybe you are expressing that sort of concern. Should we be interfering with nature? I think that argument is not a valid argument because we are interfering with nature all the time. Even giving a simple paracetamol to a patient is interfering with nature. Yeah? So, we are playing God all the time. We should not be going and using an umbrella because that is interfering with nature, because rain is meant to wet us. So, I think that is not valid argument. But what is valid argument is this, that are we wise enough to know the consequence? If I keep altering the natural world, again I'm going back to my cobra example. Do I know the consequence? I am wise enough that I am altering this gene out of benevolence, but do I know downstream what are going to be the consequences? If my action results in producing a Frankenstein, you see, I think you have to argue from that point of view and speculate, and then we have to arrive at a decision whether this step is, in our interest or not. I think that probably we have to proceed. That's how argument would proceed.
Yeah, I think we have answered all the questions. If there are any other questions, we have still time. You can ask.
Actually, Utpal,
Yes.
if you permit, I don't want to do this IPR thing. We can take it.
That's fine.
Another 10 minutes, maybe.
Yeah. No, they are already overflooded with information. Yeah.
Let me tell you one thing about the IPR landscaping thing. Just for,
right.
I mean, many of the audience are, they are informed audience. They already know. It is essentially what? Suppose I am working at the cutting edge of my technology, and my work might lead to what I think is an invention, patentable invention, but I may be mistaken. Maybe that was already patented by somewhere. Maybe it is not so new information, not so original idea, So landscaping actually inform you beforehand that if you are embarking on this particular sort of research, you may not get the dividend. You may not get the patent, in America or in China or in India, because this work is probably not original, so not everything is patentable, essentially. So that is landscaping. Before you invest a lot of money, a private company, before going to invest something on finding a drug on for whatever, they would be making sure that the product that we will be coming up with would be patentable, so we can reap on our investment. So that is landscaping. And it's a very specific domain. I mean, if you are, whatever branch you are working on, you have to do specific research. And there are companies nowadays. There are many companies, many groups who does it for you. But I think before that, I wanted to actually do, which I am now a bit, we are all tired, but this copyright business, patent business itself is very interesting. Why copyright should be, why copyright, what is the philosophical argument for patent and copyright, and what are the arguments against it? Actually, there are many arguments against it. The one argument for copyright or patent is that it encourages innovation. Because I would be incentivized to innovate, because I know I will get a benefit from my work. So it is good, morally good, therefore, to have a system like that. But there is a counter argument. Actually, there is no proof as on today, any research study or any proof that actually copyright or patent actually encourage, innovation. Actually, there is a counter argument that is actually scaffold innovation, because you are restricting, people to use, ideas and information and so on. So very interesting debate as well, for and against. And another argument is that information wants to be free, as if information is a live thing. There is a philosophical argument that information is live. He wants to be free. By patenting, we are confining the information itself. So people are thinking about alternatives, like, let us, if incentivizing, we do copyright patent because to give incentive to the people who are producing good things, then of course we can give incentive in a different way. Why we need to restrict? We need to make intellectual property like as if it is a physical property. Rather we give incentive in a different way, but we make everything copyright free so that people can build on, and that way we would be producing more wealth for ourselves. So as a whole, this is very interesting field.
Yes. I have a question. So there is a effort for humanizing pigs by genome editing or various technologies so that genotransplantation can become more successful.
Yeah.
So any ethical issues involved in this kind of approaches?
I do not think there is any fundamental ethical issue because we are producing different animals as of now, who gives more milk, who gives more, and unless we argue from the standpoint of that killing is bad, I cannot kill a pig just to get his heart to be transplanted on me. That is a strong ethical argument, but we cannot argue from interfering with nature, playing God. Those arguments would be invalid. Slippery slope argument would not play any part here as well. So your argument has to be the ontological argument that I cannot kill a pig, but I am killing pig all the time to eat.
Yeah.
So,
yes. Yeah. I got it. I got the point, right?
So another argument could be, do we know the consequence? If this changing the heart tissue, if I understand, it would be probably, germline editing, then the future offspring of pigs that would be born, who knows, instead of a pig, a kind of a dangerous animal born down the line, we don't know what he would do. So maybe, you can argue from that point of view that if it is a germline, I think germline editing would be wrong because, like as with the human, I don't know. I mean, we as a human race, we do not give that kind of position to animal, So I think it would be difficult to argue against humanizing an organ of a pig, and I don't think there would be an ethical issue here.
Yeah, I think we have answered all the questions.